Part 61. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 601. Chapter 601, One person monopolizes the dating market. After coming out of the haunted house, Chu Shenxiu had already lost half his life. His handsome face turned pale with fear. He kept drinking water and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Xia Ying patted Chu Shenxiu on the shoulder and said to him, "It's okay, big turtle dove, we will fight again next year." Chu Shenxiu looked at Xia Ying with a look of despair. "Forget it, cousin Xia Ying, please spare me. I'd better live in peace for a few more years." Ha ha ha. Su Mo on the side could not suppress his smile, and mercilessly laughed at Chu Shenxiu. "I said, Chu Shenxiu, how come you, a big man, still have a delicate heart like a girl?" "Ah, no, you little cousin Sakura was not frightened, but you were so frightened that you looked like a bear. It's really interesting." Chu Shenxiu raised his head and gave Su Mo a roll of his eyes. "No one is perfect, so I, Chu Shenxiu, are not allowed to have a small flaw, right?" Su Mo clicked his tongue twice. "It's incredible. Chu Shenxiu's shame is really growing day by day. Forget it, I won't tell you anymore, I still have an appointment to attend. Let's go first." Su Mo looked down at the watch on his wrist and said to everyone, "You should have left long ago." Chu Shenxiu said angrily. Su Mo smiled and said nothing, then turned around and waved goodbye to everyone. "Hey, what about you, can you still walk?" Xia Ying suppressed a smile and asked Chu Sheng about his cultivation. Chu Shenxiu was so scared inside that his legs were weak and he couldn't move. He had no choice but to beg the staff to help him out. "Able to move." Chu Shenxiu stood up as he spoke. Just as he stood, his legs couldn't help but tremble. Chu Shenxiu's face turned dark, his legs were so disappointing. Xia Ying laughed uncontrollably on the sidelines. After playing outside all day, everyone returned home exhausted. Chu Shengming was the only one at home. Chu Shengming was sitting on the sofa. Rarely, he was not reading a book, but watching TV, although he was also watching a science column. Seeing that everyone was back, Chu Shengming turned slightly, glanced at everyone, and said calmly, "Has the matter been settled?" "It's been taken care of long ago." Chu Shenxiu answered. "When 11 Ju and I arrived, they had already finished playing. 11 Ju and I didn't even see the finale. But then we went to play for a whole day. By the way, Aunt, and what did Uncle do?" "Live in a world of two." Chu Shengming continued. "It's not easy for people to reunite, of course they go to the movies and have dinner, revisit their old places, and miss their youth." Chu Shenxiu couldn't help but give his elder brother a thumbs up. "Brother, you usually act like an idiot when it comes to love, but you still understand these things. It's really amazing. You've made a lot of progress." Chu Shengming frowned slightly. "I only know some theoretical knowledge." Xia Ying sat on the sofa, looked at Chu Shengming with a smile, and asked, "When will you start practicing, 12th cousin?" "I don't know, everything depends on fate." Chu Shengming said expressionlessly, "If it doesn't work, you can just go on a blind date when you are 30 years old." Chu Shenxiu was startled when he heard this, and looked at Chu Shengming in disbelief. His jaw almost dropped. "My brother, do you really think so? Are you going on a blind date with such good conditions? Why don't you give me anything, not giving those who really need a blind date a way to survive? This is the rhythm of planning to monopolize the blind date market by one person. What a pervert." End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 602. Chapter 602, When did you meet Tanguo? "So, just let it happen." Chu Shengming raised his eyes lightly, glanced at Chu Shenxiu, and said, "Hey, brother, what conditions do you like? I can help you find it and give it a try." Chu Shenxiu had a shy face, approached Chu Shengming, and said with a smile. Are you planning to engage in the matchmaking business in the future? Chu Shenming ignored him and continued to read his science column with peace of mind. I just graduated from Taito University and I know a lot of outstanding and good-looking girls. I can recommend them to you. As Chu Sensio spoke, he had already begun to make decisions one by one in his mind. This won't work, it's too squeamish. This one is too rude. It seems like this one is good, but it doesn't look very good. Chu Shenming moved aside and kept a distance from Chu Sensio. No need, you should just worry about yourself. Haha, Turtle Dove has a fiancé, so he doesn't have to worry about it. Xia Ying joked from the side. Chu Sensio immediately darkened his face when he heard this, looked at Xia Ying angrily, and said, Cousin Xia Ying, why are you like this? I told you it was just a joke. I have no intention of becoming a relative of the emperor in the future. Chu Sensio lay back, his face filled with despair. He doesn't like the cultivation system and the like. What's more, the little princess is much younger than him, so she may have developed a cunning and mean princess temper. Chu Sensio felt that it would be better for him to find a plain girl. When Chu Shenming heard what Chu Sensio said, he also thought of the little princess from country S. He had seen the princess when she was little. She was as cute as a Barbie doll, her eyes were as dazzling as the stars in the sky, and her smile was so sweet that it was so sweet to the heart. It's just that in recent years, the little princess has been well protected and has not been photographed by the outside world. But based on her appearance as a child, she will definitely not be any worse when she grows up. The royal family of country S has always been filled with handsome men and beautiful women, and that little princess was known as the most beautiful princess in the history of the royal family when she was very young. Forget it, I won't tease you anymore. Chu Sensio curled his lips. It was true. He was originally talking about his brother, but why did the topic suddenly shift to him? He should go find Xiajun to play games, as this would be less harmful. Just as Chu Sensio took out his mobile phone, he received a message from Tanguoer. Chu Sensio, could you please give me your brother's contact information? Chu Sensio looked at the content of the text message and frowned instantly. Tanguoer hasn't chatted with him for a long time, but that's not the key. Why do you want him to give his brother's contact information? When did Tanguoer meet his brother? Chu Sensio was stunned for a long time holding the phone. Chu Shenming noticed something was wrong with him, so he poked him with his elbow and asked, why are you so dazed? Brother, when did you meet Tanguoer? Chu Shenming was startled by Chu Sensio's endless question. Tanguoer, thinking of this name, Chu Shenming's mind immediately returned to the memory point. Tanguoer seemed to have said before that she would come to see him again, but Chu Shenming always thought it was a joke. After all, little girls in adolescence don't know what love is. Chu Shenming always thought that Tanguoer would forget about him soon, so he didn't pay attention to what Tanguoer said that day. However, what Chu Shenming didn't expect was that 2 years later, Tanguoer would really come to see him again. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 603. Chapter 603. She really wants to see him. Chu Sensio saw that Chu Shenming was stunned for a long time and did not answer his questions, so he became even more suspicious. Brother, what are you thinking about? No. Chu Shenming calmed down the expression on his face and asked Chu Sensio, what's wrong with her? She asked me for your contact information. As Chu Sensio said this, he raised his phone and showed Chu Shenming the message that Tanguoer had just sent. Don't give. Chu Shenming frowned and said to Chu Sensio. Hey, but how do you know each other, brother? Chu Sensio is still struggling with this problem. Logically speaking, How could Tanguo know Chu Shengming? To say that they had met before, it was just Chu Shengming pretending to be Chu Sensio to meet her, right? Wait a minute, Chu Sensio suddenly froze, and began to brainstorm in his mind. His brother didn't pretend to be him that day, but finally conquered Tanguo through his personality charm, right? Otherwise, how could Tanguo let him go so quickly, saying they were friends, but the two of them had almost no contact in the past 2 years. This was too heartless. Sometimes when Chu Sensio remembered, he would send Tanguo a message to chat, but Tanguo would either reply very late or give a very official and perfunctory reply. Chu Sensio has always attributed Tanguo's behavior to the fact that he hadn't let go of him yet, so he deliberately cold violated him. But now it seems that this matter is not simple. Does this mean that Tanguo has turned his attention to his brother? Do not know. Chu Shengming moved his throat, but for some reason he blurted out something he didn't recognize. Are you sure? Chu Sensio looked at Chu Shengming with suspicion. However, Chu Shengming always controlled his facial expression very well, and Chu Sensio could not see any clues from Chu Shengming's face. There are other things going on at the institute, so I won't talk to you anymore. After Chu Shengming finished speaking, he stood up and left in a hurry. Chu Sensio is still thinking about what happened just now. Why does he feel so strange? Chu Sensio had no choice but to listen to his brother and did not give Tanguo his contact information. Sorry, little Candy, my brother doesn't like to leave contact information for others. I'm afraid he will beat me if I give it to you without permission. Tanguo probably thought of this result, so he didn't hesitate and replied to Chu Sensio, okay, thank you. Tanguo sat in the car and looked at the busy traffic outside. She came to the imperial capital again. Although she skipped a grade last time, she bumped into a touring performance. That performance was very crucial to her. Even if Tanguo didn't want to spend time on it, after all, it was the right time at that time. It's the college entrance examination period. But Tanguo's parents didn't think so, so they forced Tanguo to put down his studies and devote himself to preparations for the performance. The performance was a great success, and Tanguo became famous in many countries, but unfortunately, she failed the college entrance examination. Although she didn't have the chance to get admitted to Chengdu University, Tanguo's grades were still very good and she could attend the best music conservatory. Coupled with her reputation, she also had the choice of other music conservatories. But Tanguo only wanted to take the exam at Imperial University, so she repeated her studies. She did nothing this year but studied hard to prepare for the exam. After the college entrance examination, Tanguo rushed to China without stopping. She really wanted to meet the boy in her memory. They haven't seen each other for 2 years. Tanguo doesn't know if he has forgotten her or if he has a lover by his side. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 604. Chapter 604. A girl came to see Chu Shengming. Tanguo checked the information about Chu Shengming. There was very little information about him on the internet. It took Tanguo a long time to find out where Chu Shengming worked recently. He works at the largest drug research institute in China. That place is inaccessible to ordinary people. Tanguo naturally knows that, but she still wants to give it a try to see if she can meet Chu Shengming. Tanguo drove all the way in the car. Finally arriving at the destination, Tanguo got out of the car and the bodyguard held an umbrella for her. The weather in China has always been changeable recently. The sun was shining brightly when I went out, but suddenly the sky turned gloomy, and then a steady stream of rain fell from the gray sky. Tanguo was wearing a rose-red dress today, which looked very eye-catching in the gray sky. Tanguo walked into the service desk of the institute and told him the person he was looking for. The person at the service desk said that he could only be responsible for reporting, but Tanguo was not allowed in and could only wait on the first floor. At this time, Chu Shenming was concentrating on his latest research. The landline phone beside him rang for a long time, but Chu Shenming did not answer it. The person next to him was too noisy, so he did it for him. "I think you are too involved, Professor Chu." The phone rang several times. Chu Shenming did not raise his head to respond to the man. Instead, the person next to him smiled and said, "When Professor Chu was doing research, even if there was an earthquake, he wouldn't be able to tell whether you believe it or not." Just joking, the man still answered the phone. "What's wrong? Professor Chu is busy." "What do you want from him?" "Professor Zhang, tell Professor Chu that someone is looking for him in the hall." "I am going, male or female?" Lao Zhang asked casually. "Female." Lao Zhang's eyes lit up immediately, thinking that there would be a woman looking for Chu Shenming. It was simply unbelievable. Of course, he doesn't mean that Chu Shenming is not good and will not be liked by girls. It's just that for a weirdo like Chu Shenming, girls who like him usually can't last long before he pours a basin of cold water on them and makes them feel cold. For example, the one who came to the institute some time ago was the only girl there. She fell in love with Chu Shenming at first sight on the first day, confessed her love on the second day, but gave up on the third day. As Hua Hua said, chasing Chu Shenming would be worse than chasing a stone. Maybe after a long time, a Sun Wukong will pop out of the stone. But Chu Shenming really couldn't be influenced by anything. "Okay, I will talk to Professor Chu." Lao Zhang hung up the phone, then walked up to Chu Shenming, patted Chu Shenming on the shoulder, and said, "Professor Chu, a girl is looking for you. She is waiting for you in the hall." After hearing this, the people around them stopped what they were doing and looked at Chu Shenming's reaction. Chu Shenming nodded, then walked aside to wash his hands and change clothes. It seemed that he was preparing to go out to meet the girl. "Oh my God, I thought Professor Chu would refuse after all. Isn't research the most important thing in his world?" Suo Hua looked at it, pouting and sulking. Not long after Chu Shenming left, Suo Hua followed Chu Shenming secretly. She would like to know who the girl Chu Shenming put down her research to meet. Chu Shenming started to take the elevator. His face was indifferent, but he didn't think much about it. Since it was a girl who came to see him, Xia Ying's name immediately popped into Chu Shenming's mind. Other than that, Chu Shenming never thought that other girls would come to him. "Thank you, little cutie old Su." Grandpa Mao, the popular male god. Tang Zaos reward. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 605. Chapter 605. So embarrassing. Chu Shenming walked to the service desk and asked, "Where is the person looking for me?" "I'll wait for you in the hall." The waiter pointed the way. "Good." Chu Shenming nodded and immediately walked towards the hall. Chu Shenming raised his eyes and saw sitting on the couch in the hall, with soft and shiny black hair, wearing a bright rose-red dress, and simple makeup on his face, sitting there a girl who is as quiet as water, like a narcissus that is not stained by dust. Tang Guo lowered her head and played with the corners of her skirt nervously with her hands. There was a thin layer of sweat on her palms due to nervousness, and the rhythm of her heartbeat was still disordered and never returned to normal. She didn't know if she could see Chu Shenming today. It was said that he was usually reluctant to meet people when he was doing research. Moreover, Tang Guo had not thought about what to say when they met later. Chu Shenming approached Tang Guo and frowned. He always felt that the person seemed familiar, but because Tang Guo kept his head lowered, Chu Shenming did not see her face. "If it's not Xia Ying, who could it be?" "Excuse me." Chu Shenming's clean, beautiful, and magnetic voice sounded. Tang Guo's body trembled suddenly. Tang Guo raised his head, and his panicked eyes fell on Chu Shenming's, like a frightened little white rabbit. Tang Guo thought she was fully prepared, but the moment she saw Chu Shenming, all her defenses were defeated. Tanguo stood up and looked at Chu Shenming with wide eyes. He is still the same Chu Shenming, his eyes are cold and cold, without any warmth. It's always hard to guess what he is thinking at the moment. Tanguo opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but when she came to her mouth, it was just a simple greeting, hello. Chu Shenming was a little surprised when he saw it was Tanguo, but after thinking about it, it seemed to be reasonable. Chu Shenming just frowned slightly, and then relaxed. When he looked at Tanguo, his eyes were calm, as if he was seeing pedestrians on the road. Hello. Chu Shenming didn't know what to say, but it was always useful to reply with something similar. Well, I'm sorry that I came over suddenly and disturbed your research. Tanguo bit her lower lip and whispered. Tanguo's black grape-like eyes kept staring at Chu Shenming, as if she had actively filtered out other scenery in her field of vision. Chu Shenming was the only scene in her eyes, and everything else was just a foil. What's up? Chu Shenming asked calmly. Actually, there's nothing wrong. Tanguo pursed her lips and suddenly felt a bit cold in the air around her, which was very embarrassing. Oh, so, have you been admitted to God's university? Chu Shenming suddenly thought of something and mentioned this. Chu Shenming's words made Tanguo's eyes light up instantly. Chu Shenming still remembered what she said, that she would take the exam to Tiandu University and then come to him. He also remembered what she said. I think there should be no suspense. Tanguo said. Congratulations. Although it was a congratulations, there was no joy on Chu Shenming's face, and it was a very polite word. So awkward. Tanguo couldn't help but sweat all over. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 606. Chapter 606 Is Xia Ying good to watch? Actually, I have nothing to do, you can go do some research. Tanguo whispered. Chu Shenming didn't say anything more, and turned around and left. After walking a few steps, Chu Shenming suddenly raised his head and looked at the gray sky outside. He stopped and turned sideways to look at Tanguo and asked. It's raining outside. If you don't have an umbrella, you can go to the service desk to borrow one. Okay, thank you. Tanguo nodded, and then looked at Chu Shenming's leaving figure, and suddenly a warm current surged through his heart. In fact, sometimes, Chu Shenming is also a very warm-hearted person. A casual word or a small gesture can move Tanguo for a long time. Tanguo immediately stood up and prepared to leave. Suohua arrived at the research room in advance before Chu Shenming came up. A group of people were waiting to hear the fresh gossip she brought. Hey, Suohua, why do you look so ugly? Ha ha ha, it's really like a ghost. What did you see? A group of people gathered around the flower and asked her questions. Suohua had a drooped face and said angrily, I saw a very good-looking girl. How beautiful is it, how beautiful is it? When Lao Zhang heard the key word good-looking, he was originally indifferent and suddenly came over to join in the fun. She is very beautiful, like a fairy, and has a very good temperament. I have never seen such a beautiful person. Suohua said and sighed again. That's just because you don't see many people. Lao Zhang said with a smile, you stay in this research room every day, and after looking at you for a long time, I think you look like a fairy. Suohua rolled her eyes at Lao Zhang and said, you are so good, Lao Zhang. No kidding, that girl is very pretty. Does it look good with my goddess Xia Ying? Xiao Li made up a sentence while doing the experiment. Different styles cannot be compared. Suohua continued, she has a Japanese sweet and cute style, which is what you otakus like the most. Her voice sounds like it has been smeared with honey. Even a girl like me can't stand her sweetness. Others were amused by what Hua Hua said. Hey, is she really Professor Chu's girlfriend? Lao Zhang said, this is the first time I have seen a girl come to see Professor Chu. Don't talk nonsense, Professor Chu doesn't have a girlfriend. Sui Hua became anxious as soon as he heard it. Hey, it's only a matter of time before I hear your description. Lao Zhang smiled maliciously. At this time, Chu Shenming also came in, and everyone's discussion suddenly stopped. As soon as Chu Shenming came in, the busy research room immediately became so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Chu Shenming took care of everything and then continued his research. At this time, Lao Zhang came over curiously and asked, Hey, Professor Chu, your girlfriend? Chu Shenming shook his head and ignored him. Suo Hua suddenly showed a happy expression. Although he was rejected when he confessed to Chu Shenming last time, Suo Hua still couldn't let go of Chu Shenming. He always thought that if they stayed together for a long time in the future, they might not be in love for a long time. Suo Hua has always held such a beautiful thought in her heart, so as long as Chu Shenming is single, as the girl who has the most contact with Chu Shenming, she has a great chance. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 607. Chapter 607. Xia Ying is a little fairy. Stefan came to China, and Xia Ying and the others went to the airport to pick him up. Stefan is now 16 years old, and he looks like a handsome young man. When Xia Ying saw him for the first time, he was just a young lady, but now, he has grown up so much, and time flies by. It's really fast. As soon as Stefan saw Xia Ying, he subconsciously rushed over and gave Xia Ying a bear hug, but Stefan had just started to run towards Xia Ying. Suddenly, Yu Lingfeng stopped in front of Xia Ying, and Chu Shenxiu stopped in front of Stefan. As if by coincidence, the two of them blocked the contact between Xia Ying and Stefan. Stefan looked at Xia Ying aggrievedly. Xia Ying darkened her face in embarrassment, then poked Yu Lingfeng's back and said, Yu Lingfeng, we agreed not to be jealous of Stefan. Yu Lingfeng curled his lips and said as if he didn't care, I'm not jealous, it was an instinctive reaction. Despite what he said to Xia Ying, when Yu Lingfeng met Stefan's eyes, his pupils darkened instantly. Stefan paid no attention to Yu Lingfeng's reaction. He only had Xia Ying in his eyes. On the way, Stefan kept clinging to Xia Ying and even showed Xia Ying his paintings. Xia Ying. Stefan uttered two words in Chinese with a clear accent. Xia Ying's eyes lit up. She had known that Stefan was learning Chinese before, but what she didn't expect was that after not seeing him for a while, Stefan's Chinese ability had improved by leaps and bounds, and now he was almost as good as a native Chinese. Stefan, can you say a few more words? Xia Ying looked at Stefan expectantly. She wanted to know where Stefan's Chinese level had reached. Xia Ying, yes, little, fairy. Stefan said word for word, very seriously. Xia Ying's heart melted after hearing this. How can Stefan be so cute? Stefan, you are really great. Xia Ying hugged Stefan excitedly, and Stefan nuzzled into Xia Ying's sweet arms with a smile, like a docile little puppy. Chu Shenxiu and Yu Lingfeng were standing aside, their faces darkened into Bao Qingtian. I want to beat him. Chu Shenxiu gritted his teeth and said. Add me one. Yu Lingfeng said lightly and glanced at Stefan. Stefan noticed the cannibalistic gazes of Yu Lingfeng and Chu Shenxiu. Not only was he not afraid, but he stuck out his tongue at them provocatively. Chu Shenxiu took a breath, this brat actually provoked him. After returning home, Luo Xian and Xiachuan Hai saw the handsome Stefan, who was so handsome that their faces were filled with blood. Stefan opened his sapphire blue eyes and looked at Luo Xian and Xiachuan Hai. Although they had been looking at him enthusiastically, Stefan was afraid of strangers, so he kept hiding behind Xia Ying and refused to come out to see people. Xia Ying could only patiently explain to Stefan, Stefan, don't be afraid, they are my parents. Stephen blinked and stared at Xia Ying for a long time, as if he understood something, and then his tense nerves relaxed. He said cautiously to Luo Xian and Xia Chuanhai, "Hello." When Luo Xian and Xia Chuanhai heard this, they both looked surprised. They looked at each other and screamed, "Oh my god, he can actually speak Chinese. So cute." Luo Xian looked at Stefan with eyes that could not hide her motherly heart at all. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 608. Chapter 608, Heartache. Chu Shenming, who was silent on the side, was also attracted by this foreign guest. He went over and looked at Stefan. Stefan's fearful and panic-stricken eyes fell into Chu Shenming's eyes. Chu Shenming immediately I noticed something was wrong. Is he? Chu Shenming asked Chu Shenxiu in a low voice, then frowned and pointed in the direction of his head. Chu Shenxiu shook his head, "That's not true, he has autism." Chu Shenming understood immediately. Earlier there were rumors that the so-called Little Prince of Music had autism, but the rumors soon passed. In addition, Stefan's perfect performance at the San Diego music competition did not give anyone any clues, so the outside world did not know about his disease. "By the way, brother, do you have any way to cure him?" Chu Shenxiu suddenly thought of something and said to Chu Shenming. Chu Shenming glanced at Chu Shenxiu angrily, "I'm just a person who studies medicine. Do you really think I'm a miracle doctor? What's more, if I could cure such a complicated disease, why would I still be standing here doing it now? Well, it's already famous all over the world." "All right." Chu Shenxiu curled his lips, his brother was right. When eating, Luo Xian didn't know what kind of food Stefan liked to eat, so she specially cooked a lot of Western food for him. As a result, Stefan didn't touch those Western foods very much, and instead focused on eating the Chinese food made by Luo Xian. Luo Xian felt very strange, so he said, "I was worried that Stefan wouldn't be able to get used to our Chinese food at first, but now it seems that Stefan likes it very much." Luo Xian said with a smile. "Stefan eats very well, he really likes to eat, he can't pretend." Xia Ying smiled and explained, "Mom, when I was in Austria, I made Chinese food for Stefan, and he liked it." Luo Xian felt a little incredible. Most Westerners are not very adaptable to the taste of Chinese food. It is rare to meet a Westerner like Stefan who loves Chinese food. "Mom, your craftsmanship is much better than mine, that's why Stefan likes it so much," Xia Ying said, looking at Stefan with a sweet smile. Stefan also noticed Xia Ying looking at him, so he raised his head and gave Xia Ying a sweet smile, and then said seriously, "It's delicious." Luo Xian immediately laughed from ear to ear after hearing this. Chu Shenxiu was eating with an aggrieved face. Chu Shenming glanced at him and realized something was wrong with Chu Shenxiu, so he asked, "What's wrong with you?" "It's nothing, I just feel that today's meal is a bit bitter." Chu Shenming naturally understood what Chu Shenxiu meant, but Luo Xian did not understand, so she asked in confusion, "Is that dish bitter? Why didn't I eat it?" Chu Shenxiu twitched his nose, pursed his lips, and responded, "No, Aunt, it's just that I feel bitter in my heart." Luo Xian couldn't laugh or cry when she heard this, "Why do you have to suffer so much?" When Xia Ying heard this, she immediately understood what Chu Shenxiu meant, so she gave Chu Shenxiu a piece of sweet and sour pork ribs and said, "Eat this, it won't be bitter after eating it." Chu Shenxiu sighed, took a bite, and then said, "It's not bitter anymore, but it's sour." Xia Ying gave Chu Shenxiu a roll of her eyes. This guy continued to act endlessly. "It's okay, cousin Sakura, just ignore him." Chu Shenming couldn't stand it anymore, so he said to Xia Ying. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 609. Chapter 609 Music and Xiaoying. Ifir. Chu Shenxiu sighed heavily. Even his brothers were like this, he was really like a weed now. Chu Shenxiu looked at Yu Lingfeng like a baba, meaning, how about we run away from home together? Yu Lingfeng looked at Chu Shenxiu with disdain. He still remembered that Xiaoying told him before that Chu Shenxiu ran away from home. He felt that no matter what, he could not sink to such a brainless state as Chu Shenxiu. After dinner, Stefan begged Xiaoying to practice piano with him. He hadn't played four-handed with Xiaoying for a long time, and he missed that long-lost feeling very much. Stefan had never played four-handed with anyone before Xiaoying. Later, when he met Xiaoying, he fell in love with this feeling. He even enjoyed it more than playing the piano himself. It was also the first time that he experienced the charm of playing with four hands. Stefan showed Xiaoying his latest score, and Xiaoying was extremely surprised. As expected of Stefan, he brings her such unexpected surprises every time. That's great, Stefan. Xiaoying praised sincerely. Stephen showed a sweet smile. He was also very happy to see Xiaoying smiling. Give you. Stefan put the music score in front of Xiaoying and said very seriously. Xiaoying was a little flattered. Really? Thank you, Stefan, I like it very much. I like every piece of your music. Xiaoying was intoxicated with every note in the score, and couldn't help but feel that she was also a human being, but those small notes seemed to have life in Stefan's hands, becoming much more vivid and agile. Write a song for you. Stefan suddenly said these words again, and Xiaoying immediately understood what Stefan meant. Stephen knew that Xiaoying had an identity as a thorn bird, and she was good at writing songs and singing. So Stefan specially wrote such a song for Xiaoying, hoping that Xiaoying could fill in the lyrics and then release the song. It can be considered a collaboration between Stefan and her. Stefan, you are awesome, this song is going to be a hit. Xiaoying may not have released a new song for a long time. During the year of college entrance examination, in order to prepare for the exam with peace of mind, she has not prepared new music. Her fans have been begging for a long time on Weibo, hoping that Xiaoying will release a new song soon. Xiaoying has also seen it, but she really has no inspiration recently. She was also lazy. She had just finished her college entrance examination and wanted to have some fun and relax. But now that Stefan has provided her with such a good song, the next lyrics will be easy for Xiaoying. Like. Xiaoying didn't understand what the word Stefan meant, so she frowned and looked at him in confusion. Like, Xiaoying, laugh. After Stefan finished speaking, he smiled sweetly. Xiaoying was amused by him. When Stefan smiles, his clear and vivid blue eyes are like fine gems, exuding an enviable brilliance. He looked at Xiaoying with eyes full of doting and love. In Stefan's world, music and Xiaoying are the most important. The former allowed him to survive, and the latter allowed him to survive with hope. Well, Stefan, what do you want to name it? Xiaoying pointed to the score and asked Stefan. Whatever Xiaoying likes, that's what she likes. Stefan said simply, looking at Xiaoying with eyes filled with stars. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 610. Chapter 610 I am also very fragile. Ahem. At this time, someone coughed from the corner, and Xiaoying and Stefan turned to look at the same time. Yu Lingfeng was leaning against the wall, looking at Xiaoying and Stefan thoughtfully with a handsome face. Stefan met Yu Lingfeng's gaze, and the moment their eyes met, there was an electric spark. Yu Lingfeng. Xiaoying called Yu Lingfeng's name. I have something to ask you. Although Yu Lingfeng was talking to Xia Ying, he was looking at Stefan. Stephen pouted slightly, reached out and took Xia Ying's arm, raised his head, and said to Yu Lingfeng, "Xia Ying, practice the piano with me." Yu Lingfeng narrowed his eyes and stared at Stefan with icy eyes. But Stefan was not afraid of Yu Lingfeng's gaze at all. Instead, he felt like he was getting braver with each defeat, pulling Xia Ying tighter. "What's the matter?" Xia Ying saw that Stefan was holding her and not letting her go, so she had to ask Yu Lingfeng what was going on and tell her face to face. Yu Lingfeng glanced at Stefan and said to Xia Ying, "Come with me." Xia Ying looked at Stefan, who was leaning on her arm next to her, and frowned in embarrassment. Stefan glared at Yu Lingfeng and had to let go of Xia Ying. He didn't want to see Xia Ying frowning. "So I had to lend it to Yu Lingfeng for a while." "1 minute." Stefan raised his index finger and said to Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng didn't take it seriously. He walked up to Xia Ying, took Xia Ying's hand, pulled the corner of his mouth, and said in a cold voice, "Stefan, do you remember what I told you?" The light in Stefan's eyes dimmed immediately, and he looked at Xia Ying with a hint of melancholy. Yu Lingfeng told him at that time that Xia Ying would marry him in the future. Stefan asked, "What is marrying him? Why did Xia Ying marry Yu Lingfeng instead of marrying him?" Yu Lingfeng said that marrying him means that Xia Ying will be with him until she grows old. Stefan asked again, "What should he do?" Yu Lingfeng said, "If you don't make noises and don't think wrongly, you can stay by Xia Ying's side for the rest of your life and be his junior brother." Stephen asked, "What would happen if he had a wrong idea?" Yu Lingfeng glanced at Stefan, "And you will never see her again." Stefan has always remembered the conversation with Yu Lingfeng, so after Yu Lingfeng just mentioned it, Stefan couldn't help but feel a little sad. Why does Xia Ying like Yu Lingfeng, why not him? Xia Ying followed Yu Lingfeng and left. Stefan stood there, silently watching Xia Ying's leaving figure. "Yu Lingfeng, you shouldn't be so cruel to Stefan. He is very sensitive and fragile, just like a child." Xia Ying whispered. She has always regarded Stefan as a child. A genius who needs care. In an autistic world like Stefan, the outside world is to him, and everyone else is devil to him. Except for Xia Ying, he had to take a big step before he could try to communicate with anyone else. For Stefan, any interpersonal communication is an obstacle that needs to be overcome. Like a peak, a high wall. In his world, the safe area is too small. Yu Lingfeng paused, then turned around, stared at Xia Ying, pursed his lips, and said something he would regret the next second, "I am also very fragile." Xia Ying was stunned for a moment. After understanding, she immediately laughed and said, "Yu Lingfeng, I told you not to be jealous of Stefan." End of this chapter.